Good evening, everybody. Nick Thompson, veterinary surgeon, the gut doctor, they call me. And just delighted to be here. We've been on holiday for the last couple of weeks, so I'm looking a little more tanned than usual, which is quite something for I'm half Irish. So great to be here and to be talking to you. We've had a little bit of drama for the last half hour, just setting up the system. Forgive the adrenaline, but it looks like everything's happening. We've got people, some people are joining. Great to see lots of people coming through. That's fantastic. Do say hello. I'll just allow a little more time for people to come in. During that time, I'm just going to say hello and thank you very much to Verm-X. Verm-X allow me to spend days just thinking about herbs and worms and gut function and microbiome and all these amazing things. So really appreciate their support. That's absolutely fantastic. Lots of people coming through now. So I'm going to say this is what we're doing. There's Zeb. Good evening. And Jerry, good to see you from Ohio. Hi, great. Yep, plenty of horses in Ohio. So I'm told. So Jerry, you're very welcome. Zeb says, nice to have you back. Great to be back, Zeb. Great to see you there. Okay, so guys, this is what we're going to do this evening. We've got lots to go through, so I'm not going to dilly-dally right now. I'm going to give you lots of information, and then I'm going to come back so that we can chat, we can have questions and answers and do all the things that we normally do. So without any further ado, I'm going to go over and I'm going to ask Rosie to confirm that we're looking good, that she can hear me and everything is good there. The reason I do that is because with the system we've got here, it's quite a good system, but it means that when I go to my slides, all I can see is my slides and I can't see you guys. So I just need to make sure that Rosie says that she can hear what I'm saying and she can see the slides. So you can see me in the bottom corner. Oh, hang on. I don't think, no, I need to change it over. There we go. We go like that. Great. Look at that. There we go. So hopefully, Rosie, we've got a big slide and me in the corner. Yep, back in the corner. Hopefully in the corner now. Okay. There we go. Boom, says Rosie. We're good to go. Bless you. Rosie, fantastic. Thank you very much. Tonight, not that we ever talk about anything that's particularly kind of superficial or unimportant, but I think that the topic tonight of worm resistance in equines, worm resistance in all domestic animals, and worm resistance to pharmaceuticals in all domestic animals and in humans is massive, and that's what I'm really going to try and get through to you this evening. I'm going to show you some of the slides that you've seen before, but I think they're so explicit and useful that I'm not going to apologize for showing those again to you. Not everybody has seen this stuff, and if you're a little bit familiar with it, I find sometimes just the penny drops when you see the slide for the second time. So what are we dealing with? What's the problem? The problem is that the resistance of worms is increasing apace. The worms that infect humans are becoming more and more resistant. The worms that infect sheep in particular, but also horses and many domestic species, the worms are becoming resistant. Thus, the drugs don't work. And this is an extremely important topic that we're going to go through. If you don't like worms, I really apologize, because there are going to be a few pictures of worms, but I've tried to minimize it because there are, people do complain sometimes that they're a bit squeamish. So okay, so next slide. Definitions. So let's make sure that we're all on the same page, everybody. So a helminth is just a posh way of saying a parasitic worm. So these are not the earthworms. These are not the worms that are crawling around in your garden. These are worms that infect sheep and horses and people and what have you. And if we take helminth and we put anti in front of it, we get Anthelmintic, which is a deworming drug. Okay, not a herb, it's a drug. Anthelmintic is a drug. A bacteria is the plural of bacterium, which means one bacterium, which is a single cell microorganism. It is a tiny little bug, which is one tiny cell. A worm is a multicellular organism. Bacteria is multicell. Antibiotic, obviously, is a drug that kills bacterial infection, and an anthelmintic is a drug that kills worms. Okay, but they're pretty similar. Resistance, and this is a key concept. Resistance is what happens to bacteria or to worms when they are repeatedly exposed to anthelmintics or antibiotics. And this has happened, the first antibiotics came along with Alexander Fleming, first produced in about 41, and by D-Day, by 1944, they were seeing resistance to penicillin. For example, the anthelmintics have been around since the 30s, and equally resistance has grown up more and more and more over the years. The more you start killing large populations, the more you will select for those few individuals who are resistant to that which you're trying to kill them. It's kind of nature's law, really. So let's look at a few diagrams to see what actually is resistance. So we're going to use antibiotic resistance as a way of getting into the idea of resistant organisms. So let's say this is Freddie the man and Neddy the horse. Fred and Ned, here we are, and they have within them a mixed population of bacteria. Okay, mixed population of bacteria. This is important. We'll get on to worms in a minute. If either Fred or Ned get an infection, that is to say some kind of imbalance in those bacteria within them, and they go to the doctor, and the doctor gives them an antibiotic, not an anthelmintic, because this is a bacterial thing, so they get an antibiotic, both of them, what will happen? Well, by definition, what will happen is the antibiotic will kill all the bugs that it is able to kill. Okay, so in this diagram, all the grey-green tiny bugs, these are the susceptible bugs, they are knocked out. Yeah, they're gone. Therefore, by definition, the bugs that are resistant to the antibiotic are left. And they think this is great because all the competition is gone, so they can just go to town. And thus, when you do this, year after year, generation after generation, season after season, you will gradually increase the number of antibiotic resistant bacteria. Okay, so let's use that concept and we'll look at Anthelmintic resistance. So we've got Fred and Ned here, and they unfortunately for Fred, have a mixed population of worms within them. Now, all those worms might look exactly the same, but their biochemistry of one or two of them, and in this case, the pink ones are the resistant ones. And what happens is Fred goes to the doctor and says, "Oh, I'm not feeling so very well," and Ned has a bit of colic or something. And so the doctor or the vet comes along and says, gives an Anthelmintic dewormer. Okay, you can get Anthelmintic dewormers for kids, and you can go for humans, and you can get them for horses, obviously. And what do these Anthelmintic dewormers do? Answer: they knock out everything that they are able to knock out. They kill all the worms that they are able to kill, and thus, in this diagram, they're the boring brownie looking ones. They are all killed. Yeah, similar to the antibacterial scenario. And therefore, we inadvertently select for those worms which are resistant to the wormer that you've used for years and years and years. Okay, and so again, what happens is they think, "Yay, this is great. We can go to town and we can do what we like because all the competition has gone." So that's how Anthelmintic resistance, again, it's a facsimile of the antibiotic resistance, but I think it's quite useful to see how it happens. It is a function of using simple. Now, pharmaceuticals, they're very clever and all the rest of it, but they're very simple. Yeah, if we're using ivermectin, ivermectin type molecules, Equivalent, was the name for it. If we're using that, it's just got a single molecule in it, which has a single site of action for anthelmintic effects, and therefore, if one or two of the worms in that horse have a mutation which allows them to resist that single specific site of action, then they go to the races. They're off on a great start because they do not get killed by the ivermectin, for example. So happy days. So even in 2012, our friend here, Ray Kaplan, in Georgia, he said in the majority of most important parasite species in sheep, goats, cattle, and in this case, most importantly, horses, multiple drug resistance is the new status quo. It's not just, oh, we find it here and there. He's saying it's here to stay. It's really big business, and we need to address it in a massive, massive way. So why are we getting excited about resistance to worms in the horse? Yeah, we've got wormers, we've got this, that, and the other. Why are we getting worried and really worried about this? And I'm going to tell you why. The reason is humans all around the world, not so much in Europe and America and in these so-called first world countries, but if the worms that are routinely treated in humans all around the world, and the world is warming, and therefore these tropical diseases tend to be found in more temperate climes, if and when they become resistant to wormers, then we are going to have less and less drug defenses against those worms. I'm talking human beings, I'm talking your family, your kids, your granny, your everybody is going to be less. They're going to be more at risk of infection from those worms. And I'll tell you now, having worms is not fun. I can't tell you from first-hand experience, but the kids did get worms, and I've seen some really nasty cases in humans, and it's not fun. And imagine you're sitting there, you've got worms, you've got elephantiasis, you've got river blindness, or your kids have living in Mali, Nigeria, wherever you are, and there are no drugs. The doctor turns around and says, in 20 years' time, I'm sorry, all the drugs have gone. We haven't got anything to treat your child with river blindness. So there's a human health concern with this. There's obviously also an animal welfare issue. If we have no drugs to treat worms, which are ubiquitous, A, are ubiquitous among domestic animals, and B, as Ray Kaplan says, they are all containing worms with multiple resistance. That is a potentially very dangerous situation right now, today. But also, it's a very dangerous situation as we go into the future, because this problem is only going to get worse. In the 50s, they hardly even dreamt about this stuff. Now, vets and the molecular biologists, the parasitologists, they talk about little else. Okay, so obviously animal welfare is of great concern, but also economics. If farmers have to pay higher and higher prices for to keep their animals fit, to allow them to fatten for market, and use more and more pharmaceuticals, and we are going to come on to herbs, I promise you, then that is going to impact the cost of raising meat animals, and so the price of meat will rise. So economics, it's going to affect us economically. So there's a wonderful paper here by Shalaby, almost 10 years old now, and he goes through some of the suggestions that he came across even back 9 years ago. And very briefly, he was talking about 4 main areas. Number 1 is targeted selective treatments. That is to say, choose the right wormer. How can you tell? You can test sensitivity of worms to a given product, and you can also do before and after. How much did the product affect the worm burden? But also target the individuals. If you've got 10 horses in the paddock, the chances are that there'll be just 1 or 2 which will have a much higher burden than everybody else, and they are the one maintaining the increased worm density within the entire herd there. So targeted treatments is very important. And in Scandinavia and in Holland, they are now going to the extent of restricting pharmaceutical worm product only from vets. So you can imagine the price is probably going to rise, the availability is going to drop, and it's going to be much more difficult to get a hold of those products. So it's in our own interests to do whatever we can to reduce our dependence today on these pharmaceutical products. Second element that they talk about in the paper is strict quarantine measures. This is pretty obvious. If you don't bring a completely unknown new animal onto the yard, unless they have been treated from the yard that they came from, or they are quarantined and treated in the yard in an isolated area. It's only for a few days, but put them in an isolated area. You don't need to isolate them out of sight of every other horse. in the yard, but you do need to make sure that the manure and they're not in contiguous stables and grazing area, so that there can't be any overlap. Okay, obviously it's obvious stuff, but it absolutely needs to be said. Quarantining, we all know about quarantining now with COVID, and this really applies to our horses. So now getting into some really interesting areas, and this was again 9 years ago, and they're saying do not rely on the sole use of anthelmintics. Yes, even then, and let's face it, it's not the Dark Ages 9 years ago, but this was official, this was mainstream. They're saying anthelmintics on their own are insufficient to allow us to move into the future with the assurance that we can minimize the development of resistance within our domestic animals. And so they suggest that we employ more complex and sustainable recipes, and there's a number of recipes there: nutrition, pasture management. Really, one that I really love is nematode trapping fungi. So basically you'd spray your pasture, your paddocks, with a spray of fungi which feed on the worm larvae, which I think is an amazing development. These things are about, you can Google it. There are anti-parasitic vaccines, which in themselves don't make me entirely comfortable, but breeding for resistance, nutrition, pasture management, these things, fantastic. Let's really go to town on those. Do look up nematode trapping fungi. But perhaps the most important thing of the whole talk really is what I'm coming to, is that the use of herbal botanical dewormers is massively important, because if you're using an effective product, it means that you're not having to use a pharmaceutical. And the beauty of wormers, the beauty of these herbal products, is that they attack the worm in dozens, if not hundreds of different ways. And so it's impossible for those worm populations to develop resistance, because they're getting attacked in different ways every single time that herb is used. Unlike the Ekvalan, for example, which is a single molecule every time. So they eventually learn to dodge it. You can't dodge herbs because they are so complex. The average single herb has 400 to 600 different elements in it. Now, not all of those are going to be anti-parasitic, but they are going to be promoting the lymphatics. They're going to be promoting good motility of the gut. They're going to be promoting the immune response within the gut, and they are going to have, some of them are going to be anti-parasitic themselves. They're going to actually affect the worm directly. Therefore, I think we are obliged to bring herbal products into our regime to reduce our dependence on these simple pharmaceutical wormers, in order to allow the use of both the herbal and the pharmaceutical wormers into the future. I think really that is the future. Now, just a couple of more slides before we have a chat. One of my heroes, this is Joel Salatin. He's written a book called Folks, This Ain't Normal. And if you're in the slightest bit interested in sustainable agriculture and sustainably maintaining horses, I think is part of sustainable agriculture. And therefore, this is the guy to talk about. He doesn't talk about horses per se, but the principles he uses is a very good education for anybody interested in pasture management and really broad holistic management for their horses. He's very entertaining, he's very opinionated, I think he's an absolutely great guy, Joel Salatin, and this is from his YouTube. So if you haven't got time to sit and read the book, then you've got either the Audible, you can listen to it while you're mucking out the horses, or this is the YouTube. So when you come home in the evening, you can be entertained by my friend Joel Salatin. He's not my friend, I wish he was. My friend Joel Salatin. Another very interesting homegrown sustainable champion is the very lovely Patrick Holden. Now, Patrick came to talk to us at the Raw Pet Medics in January, and we had an absolutely fascinating conversation with him. He was eloquent, erudite, and utterly no nonsense. He didn't talk about horses, but he talked about domestic stock, and he's a fascinating guy. He runs the Sustainable Food Trust, and so he well worth having a look at the Sustainable Food Trust. You can Google him, Patrick Holden. If you want to see him in full flow, you can have a look at the Raw Pet Medics. We have, by the way, started doing podcasts within the Raw Pet Medics, so you're welcome to take some listen to him while you're mucking out the horses. So the use of herbs in horses is like feeding raw meat to dogs. It is just the most natural thing in the world. They were eating herbs before man even came out of the caves, even probably before we left the trees. So it seems to me a very good idea to go back to the future to bring herbs into your anthelmintic plan, such that we reduce our dependence on pharmaceutical anthelmintics. It's really that simple, guys. So that's the end of the show. Let's go back to there. Hopefully you've been nothing more from Rosie, so that's good. Let me we go like that, then I go like that, and then we go like that. Okay, great. So let's have a look. Good. I'm just going to go through some questions, guys. If you've got any more, I will get back down to the bottom to see what everybody's got to say. Karen, here you go. This is Karen. Bless you, Karen. Nice to see you. Thank you for saying. It's actually lovely to be back. But we did have a great time. Zeb, sorry, it sounds like I froze, but I'm back here. Helen, let's see, what does she say? Helen says, my dog's worm came back today with a positive for Toxocara canis. I've never had a dog with worms before and at something of a loss. Okay, so with my conventional vet hat on, I am obliged to say that the licensed product would be Drontal Plus, or would be Panicure, or whatever, your vet will be able to help you with that. If you chose not to use the licensed product, then I will sometimes advise the use of Verm-X. Yeah, I'm looking out the window here. I use it on the chickens, we use it on the cat, we use it on the dog, and we would use it on the children if we needed to, I'm sure. But I would suggest that's a great idea. If you need to boost that and you really want to hit things hard, you can alternate weekly, fortnightly with some diatomaceous earth. That can be very useful. But I find that you can usually get on top of those without having to use a pharmaceutical wormer if you choose not to use the licensed product. Okay, good. Um, thank you, Foz. Thank you. Jane Johnson agrees. She says Joel Salatin is wonderful. He certainly is. Let's have a look. Great stuff. Here you go. Let's go with this. How are we doing? We're on time, and I've got a question. Just the last. We'll do the last question here. Oh no, a few more. Okay, let's have a look. So, Deborah says, "What kind of herbs would you recommend to treat to?" Hang on. What kind of herbs would you recommend to sheeps with heartworm? Okay. I think, okay. I'd say we're talking about equines this evening, so I'm just going to stick with that. But Deborah, email me at nickthompson@holisticvet.co.uk and we can go through that. Yeah, I don't want to bore people by going off on sheep. Most horse owners, I find, don't have sheep, and most sheep owners don't have horses, although that's not strictly true. Okay. Gemma is talking about sheep as well, so I'm just going to again go over there. Zeb is coming in here, and she says, "Can donkeys have the same herbs?" Yes, they can. I use Verm-X on donkeys frequently, and really like it. Also, I use Verm-X, especially. I love it on pregnant mares. It's great because I don't like using pharmaceuticals with those guys, and I'll use it on really old. I've done some work with racehorse thoroughbred rescue, and they find that the Verm-X really nice, really gentle. Also, there's many an equine who gets colic after any pharmaceutical intervention, and I think that because we are obliged to first do no harm, I think that thinking of herbal products is a really good and a very strong, and I think we're obliged. If you every drug you use injures the horse in an attempt to try and worm it, then I think you need to look more broadly, and I would strongly suggest that's a good idea. Let's have a look. What's Helen saying? Yeah, we answered that a little bit earlier on, Helen. So hopefully you will have seen that. Okay, guys, there we go. Oh no, Gemma, as usual, I'm going on and on. So if you want to go now, please do. Gemma says, this is interesting. I haven't wormed my horses for over a year. What would you recommend as a plan to get started? I would suggest that you send off some droppings to one of the worm count, or talk to your vet and they will do the count for you. The people I use are called wormcount.com, but you've also got Westgate Labs. They're also very good laboratory, and either of those would get you started. I think that's the place to go. The British Equine Veterinary Association says that if you've got roundworms at less than about 300 eggs per gram, you're okay. Unlike dogs, where we want 0 worms, with horses, just a low, anything under 300 is considered that's okay. So that's, Gemma, is where I'd start. And again, if you do get over 300, email me and we can talk about where we go from there, and we can go on from there. Marvelous. Zeb, absolute pleasure. It's always good to see you. Thank you. Right, there you go. I'm going to go. We've got light evenings now, so I'm going to go and walk around the garden and just enjoy some evening light. I will say a very good evening to you. We will see you in 4 weeks' time. Please have a look at the Verm-X website. All the details will be there as to what we're going to be doing in that 4 weeks, and we will come along with some very interesting stuff for you, no doubt. It's always going to have a herb twist. It's always going to have, usually going to have a parasitic twist, but it's always going to be gut orientated, because we are obviously gut doctor. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much, and speak to you again. Speak to you in 4 weeks.